This is Donna Gibbs with Summit Wellness Centers, and I'm going to share a personal word today about something that I learned years ago through a really horrific trial of life and how it applies to the tools that we need to be successfully self-quarantined. And some of you who are hearing this are already self-quarantined, or maybe you've been ordered to quarantine, and you're wondering how you're going to manage that mentally. And I'll tell you, it is a mental game, and it's very important that we use successful tools in it. So many years ago, this has been over 18 years ago, I had a hospital stay that was 3 months long. It was the physical trial of my life, bar none. I remember the first few days of that hospital stay, just trying to manage what was happening physically. But my doctor, a godly man who has remained just somebody I respect so intensely, but he looked at me that day in all seriousness and said, "Listen, Donna, you cannot afford to be depressed. You're going to be here for a long time if things go well. And you're going to have to use every tool you have ever recommended for someone to keep yourself from being depressed in this." And so I made it my own personal commitment from that moment on that I was going to do my very best to remain of sound mind, of stable, of positive outlook, to remain in hope. And I'm going to give you just a few of those tools that I used that allowed me to be successful in that journey. And I think also tied into the physical success, although it wasn't pretty, but just to be remain physically stable as well. And so these suggestions will help in our quarantine in a pandemic. Number one, and these things are going to sound crazy. Number one, make your bed. Yes, make your bed. I did that even in the hospital. On days when I couldn't do it, I requested help getting it done. And so rather than being in the bed, in my hospital bed, I laid on top of a made-up bed. Sounds so silly, but it's an action like that that signals to our brain that everything is okay. So make your bed and tell your brain the truth. Number two, get dressed. Again, sounds so silly. Yes, I even did that in the hospital. Unless it was a day physically in which it was impossible for me to do that, then I'd have to just settle for a hospital gown. Otherwise, I got dressed. So, no walking around in your PJs all day during a pandemic, because we have to send the message to our brain, I'm okay. Everything is okay. Number three, think marathon versus sprint. Yes, we have to pace ourselves, and we're not just trying to get through this day. We're pacing ourselves with the expectation of a longer term and that we're okay in that. Number four, get organized. And I mean that in terms of calendar, in terms of scheduling, and in terms of what you see in the periphery of your eye, in your atmosphere. So get organized. My husband selflessly and graciously moved in and commuted from an out-of-town hospital to stay with me every night, and had to set up with little plastic organizers, almost like a plastic disposable closet, I guess you'd say, to keep it organized. And that's how he managed his life and his belongings, so that what was in my peripheral vision was organized. There's a lot of research that backs up the importance of minimizing clutter in order to help minimize mental clutter, in order to stay stable. So stay organized. And that also means in terms of keeping a schedule. Yes, even in the hospital, I kept a schedule. I had a routine of when I was going to do my study time, when I was going to nap. I had a routine of what I was going to watch on TV or when. And so as much as possible, stay within that routine, because your body is accustomed to a rhythm and a routine. And when we change it up, we send the message to our brain that something is terribly wrong. So let's stay within those parameters. Next, stay in the Word. Oh my goodness. I lived and breathed that. I was in the Word a lot during that time. And because of that, it was a spiritual game changer for me. And I journaled, and I'm going to encourage you to do it. This morning, knowing I was going to share this with you, I pulled out some of my journals from that period of time. I only read a couple of pages of it before this video because I started weeping because it was a beautiful time spiritually. And I'm going to encourage you to get in the Word and to write what you're learning and how it's applying to your life. And next, keep in mind that this is not a wasted period of time. We're not just waiting for this thing to let up. This is a time of productivity. It was in that season, in that hospital bed, that I finished my first book. And when you can wrap your head around the opportunity that is presented rather than what is taken from you, then it allows you to use the time productively and not be wasting. And last, I'll just share with you bluntly that when I reflect back on that time in my life, physically and emotionally, even spiritually at times, it was the trial of my life. It was a huge challenge. But I also look back on that time with fondness and with gratitude. It taught me things I could never, ever have learned any other way. And just the experience of the power and the love and the care and concern of Jesus was so evident during that season. I want you to be able to experience that. And I hope it's not through a 3-month hospital stay. I wouldn't wish that on my enemy. But this pandemic, it provides us with opportunities for victories like that. Let's not waste it. So that one day we can look back on this season, much like I do my hospital stay, and say, I really don't want to live through that again because that was hard. But for everything it brought me, I wouldn't change a thing. And if we'll just abide by, cooperate with God through this process, then we'll come out of it saying, I wouldn't want to live through that again. That was tough. But for everything that it taught me and everything that it brought me, I wouldn't change a thing. Coronavirus, I've said before, is extending an invitation for victory. Let's not miss it. Take care. We will continue to provide more words of encouragement and insight and updates along the way. But there's just a few homework assignments to make the most of this time. God bless.